Peace and blessings, everyone. This is Brother Dooley, aka the Beantown Ghetto Shaman, and I hope everyone's doing well who sees this video. Got Brother Jimi Hendrix on the shirt, some organite, yeah. But I want to do some chanting. I want to do a little qigong movements with people, different things that can help people with their day, right? Out on my porch, just vibing for a second and taking in that natural rays, sun rays, and feeling this wonderful cool breeze, nice breeze going. So let me begin. First of all, I hope everyone's doing good. All right. Now, before I even start, I like to get down with some healing sounds. What's up, mamas? Daughter just came out here. What's going on? You might want to go back in there. It's get a little chilly out here tonight. So, I like to start off with some chanting. So, chanting is very healing, you know what I mean, and you can utilize chanting or zikr or the utilization of mantras and stuff. There's so many different spiritual traditions that actually utilize the chants. So it's a good friend of mine, a good brother. His name is Brother Sufi from Philly, and he is a real good person in the community that teach the benefits of chanting from the Sufi tradition. All right, and the Sufis are the mystics. They embrace the mystical teachings within Islam. All right, every religious tradition has their counterpart to it that deals with the mystics. And the mystic tradition is just basically learning how to have your own spiritual experience rather than just relying on a particular book or a particular person that said something maybe so many thousands of years ago. This is having your own direct experience with the divine. And not having a middleman to go between you to have that experience. You know what I mean? So the mystic experience is very different than someone saying, okay, well, it says this in this book, so it goes, or you know, or my priest said this about God, or you know, or the divine, or you know, the rabbi said this, or the imam says this. When you deal with the mystic tradition goes beyond the middleman. And that's also true in regard to teaching plants and fungi. This is also true when it goes into the level of understanding the ethogens and what that entails. You know what I mean? So when you think of the mystic traditions, and when you even start to do more studies, you start to see that most of these mystic traditions also utilized the teaching plants and the fungi. You know what I mean? So I definitely want to talk about that. I definitely want to go into that because I think it's something it's a good conversation and some good things to learn about, especially in the time that we live in right now. All right. So chanting. My homeboy's brother Sufi, or Sheikh Sufi, he would say that the Sufis or the mystics would chant and get so entranced or get so in tune with their chanting that they become what they are chanting. You know what I mean? So if a person, you know, doing their zik and then be like, you know, I am love, 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 it gets to the point to this vibratory level or you get to this place, the person that is chanting, it get to this place where they're at this vibration to the point that they literally become that. You know, they generate this vibration. All right. You could see that in the works of Dr. Emoto. You know what I mean? And I seen his work when I first seen documentary What the Bleep Do You Know so many years ago. I seen that film and I was like, wow, this is some wonderful work that this scientist is working on, and all talking about vibration, you know, and be it the vibration of music, be it the vibration of prayer or chant, be it the vibration of these things, and how these vibrations affect physical matter, how it plays a part on physical matter. So this stuff is deep. And when you think of the greats like Nikola Tesla, and when he says, when you want to think of what he says, when you want to think of like of truth, or want to think of what reality is, think in terms of vibration and frequency. All right. So there's something with this, my friends. And it's the same thing with the psychedelics or the ethogens. They, you know, the teaching plants and fungi, it's an amplification. Again, dealing with frequency. It gets things going to a more heightened frequency. You know what I mean? So this is stuff we gotta understand and be aware of. You know what I mean? So I wanna start with some chants. You know what I mean? And when I think of the mystics, I want to invoke and talk about the great mystic avatar, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. You know, he comes from the Sufi tradition, and a lot of these chants that I would say in the morning that I learned from Sufi would be these chants that activated one's higher self, their higher awareness. And this is what Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba learned through his spiritual practice. He learned how to master himself to the point that he could not be killed by violence. You know what I mean? You know, you had some people out there during the time when he was alive in Senegal that wanted to take his life because he was he was considered to be a very positive leader within his community. And the powers that be did not want to see him be able to be successful in his mission. So they try to kill this man try to assassinate this man over 200 times. I think it was close to almost 300 times they tried to kill this man to no avail. You know what I mean? So when people out there, when people understand that there were greats that got assassinated, Malcolm X, you know, Martin Luther King, all kinds of people, JFK, all these people that got taken out because they were movers and shakers in their own right and were changing the paradigm. When people say like, well, you know, I don't want to put myself out there because they could take me out, you know, or whatever. My thing is this: the true protection becomes into mastering yourself, because when you master yourself, ain't no one can touch you. Ain't no one could do anything to you because you mastered the physical. You know what I mean? You literally mastered this third dimension. And there's things you can do that normally you don't know you can do. You know, most people out there, when they think of the evolution of men and women, you know, and when they look at that whole experience called the human experience, they look at it from a very limited perspective. And from that limited perspective, it's usually surrounding the five senses. I'm gonna wait until this ambulance go by. Usually deal with the five senses. You know what I mean? Smelling, tasting, touching, you know, all those type of things that we look as our own soul reality, right? But it's very important for people to be aware out there to know that there's senses that we go beyond, that we have more than five senses. My father taught me this at a very young age, and I was very fortunate to learn about this. But when I started to learn about the instance in the East, in Tibet, in China, in different places in the Himalayan mountains. I learned that these mystics could do certain things that so-called normal human beings could not do. I learned that when they mastered themselves, they were able to do certain things that would be deemed quote unquote supernatural. That they could there was testimonies of people flying through the air, such as the mystics, like for instance Milarepa. You know, they had people that could turn their body into light. You know, that they didn't die the same. You know, that they literally experienced what in Tibet they call the rainbow body technique. You know, where it's reported that these masters would literally turn their body into light. And usually the only thing that would be left behind is bits and pieces of hair and little nails and things like that. You know what I mean? But they would turn their body into light. You had people like, you could look up the greats, mystic greats, such as Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava was a yogi that turned his body into light. You know, and they still got footprints of Padmasambhava in different areas in the Himalayan mountains, and showing how you had masters that could put imprints in solid rock with their hands and their foot. So we have to understand there's much more to us. And when I came across, for instance, a book called Faces in the Smoke. Faces in the Smoke. I forgot the author's name, but it was a very interesting book. And the book was, it talked about this guy, this European who grew up in South Africa. I believe it was South Africa. And he's seen a lot of phenomena as a young boy that seemed supernatural and that he could not explain. You know, it was like, wow, you know, this defies my current reality that everyone prescribes to, and I don't understand what that was about. You know, so from a young age, it allowed the author to have a curiosity about the human experience and going beyond the factors. It allowed him as an older man when he became an older man, to become a filmmaker and to actually also go around the world and study a lot of these healers and mystics. And in the chapter in that book, they talk about the secret society of flying men in Haiti. You know, so I was very intrigued when I was super excited when I read that chapter, because again, it tells you that this particular science, this level of self-realization has been generated around the world, you know, around the world. And that these sacred teachings are still available to us. I mean, right now we live in the most dense age, what they call the Kali Yuga age, or the age of iron from the Hindu perspective. And they consider this the age of chaos. Hold on one second. Let me get this, I'm gonna get this charger here. You know, they consider this the age of chaos, or what they would call Kali Yuga, all right? From the Hindu perspective, all right? Now, everything is flip side, because this is interesting, because even though they consider this the age of Kali Yuga, the age of discord, strife, confusion, and all that, even though this is considered to be that time, and let's plug in this thing in here, even though they say this is that age right now that we're in, and if you look at it, it is very true, because if you look at our society, it's geared and only resonates to only the first three chakras. You know, it's geared to the level of just survival. You know, 9 to 5. How am I going to be able to provide for myself and my family? pay the rent, pay the bills, survival, and then it's dealing with also sexuality. You know, when you deal with the mainstream media, everything is sexualized. Everything is to keep you at that second chakra level. You know what I mean? There's really not talk of love. If you even look at the old songs of the old time of say, for instance, my father's time or my mother's time or my grandmother's time or whatever, a lot of those songs were really geared to love, was dealing with the heart chakra, was dealing with how do we cultivate love and relationships and family and stuff. That's where a lot of the music was resonating from during that time. You know, even if we look at Motown, or if you look at a lot of these songs were higher vibrational type of music, what they would call 432 hertz type of music, healing music. Whereas now, if you look at the age we live in, again, now the media, the music, all that, it's geared to just the second chakra and just pure sexuality. All right. And then the third, which this society is driven on, is the third chakra, which is dealing with just pure daggone power. People driven by power, you know, motivated by power, motivated how they could get more money, more prestige, all these other things. But you know what's interesting is that I recently was listening to Brother Nori's show, Drink Champs, right? And he had, and I love that show, by the way, because, you know, I'm a lover of hip hop, you know, and especially the golden age and all that, you know what I mean? You know, I feel it's very powerful music. And it was a music that had a big influence even on my upbringing and my going through my teenage years and all that. So Drink Champs, they highlight a lot of the legends. And within that one episode, they had Kid and Play on there interviewing them. And I remember Play was talking about in the interview how basically he became, you know, a Christian, and you know that was his path where he's at right now. But he was saying basically he was looking for something because he did everything. And a lot of people talk about this in Hollywood. There's a lot of people that talk about how they, you know, they have all the women, they have all the fame, they have all the money, they have all the physical possessions and different things that you could have, but yet there's still a level of emptiness that's still inside them. All right. And because of that, there's a level of depression and anxiety and all kinds of things going on in these Hollywood worlds that most people don't even talk about. You know, you see it in the tabloids where, you know, you see a lot of Hollywood actors, actresses, musicians and stuff that are alcoholics, dealing with drug abuse and all these things because they feel empty inside. All right. And this is what Play was saying. He's like, yo, you know, I had to look for something because, you know, basically I've done everything and it still didn't bring me a level of satisfaction. But this is what society is trying to give us every day. You know, it tries to give us every day that to resonate from those three chakras, to just be on the hamster wheel after survival, after be at the frequency of just sexuality, and also just at the frequency of just trying to gain power. And once you understand that you've done that game for so long that it becomes tiresome. You know, even the millionaires and billionaires, some of them, they take, you know, most of them, I could say most of them, all of them, you know what I mean? Because behind closed doors, you deal with a lot of insecurities. You deal with a lot of people that need healing. Even Hitler himself, I remember I was looking at this documentary, and he was talking about all these tyrants and all, they had Mussolini and all these other people, and they talked about all the medications and different things they had to take behind closed doors, because you can live in a false vibration for so long. You could live in a place so long, and then eventually, you know, truth is going to hit you upside the head. You know what I mean? Because when you deal with nature, nature grows, it supports, it stabilizes. You know, whereas you do look at falsehood, it takes away, it's eating away, it's a parasite. Now, I'm not saying parasites aren't good. Parasites have their own purpose as well. Just as the age that we're living in, right? Kali Yuga. If you look at the whole science of the Hindus, they will tell you in the golden age, or for instance, the silver age, when things are more at a higher vibration, when we are more closer to the central sun, and everyone, say for instance, is more at a enlightened place, more telepathic, you know, their cities or their so-called supernatural abilities are at a high. At that place, really no one wants to seek enlightenment during the higher ages, because everyone's content into being in this dimension. All right. So that's something to think about. There's only a few people during those ages that get 100% enlightenment or strive for true enlightenment during those ages, because everyone's content. You know, it's a more happier time, a more peaceful time, but still people can get caught in a certain age for many, many long times, you know, for a very long time, or be content for a many long time because they're very comfortable. All right. And as they say, like the Taoists and different others, when they say when a person is at a place of comfort, or at a place of saying, for instance, I have nothing to learn no more, then guess what? You're dead, really, because you're always supposed to grow. You're always supposed to evolve. Now, say, for instance, the age of Kali, or the Iron Age, when we're furthest away from the central sun, then we're talking about a people that it's a perfect environment for more souls to strive for total enlightenment, because you have more souls awakening, more enlightening souls, believe it or not, in the age of Kali than you do during the age of the golden ages. Because during that age, you have more true avatars or more enlightened beings, because it's the perfect environment for people to have a setting to say, well, this is crazy. We have chemtrails, we have GMOs, we have people talking about transhumanism, we have all kinds of things going down, vaccinations, oh, you name it, and, you know, corrupt politicians, all these things. It's a perfect environment for people to turn their back on this particular system, reality, and say, wow, you know, I'm going to strive for something more, or for something, you know, seek something more. So during the age of Kali, or the age of the so-called dark age, is where you have more true masters that pop their head up, actually, and become enlightened, which is very interesting. Very interesting. So when we look at, for instance, the teaching plants or the fungi, how's everything, love?
Good, how are you?
Good. When we look at that, it's a characteristic that's here for the age of Kali. All right. So it's a gift for the age of Kali. You know what I mean? So, you know, the ones that deal with some of this sacred science, they would call these things the boons, a boon. You know, this is a sacred for the age of Kali, because the teaching plants and the fungi, many people would say that's the faster path towards enlightenment, you know. Whereas the same thing as you would say from the water school and the fire school within Qigong. Now, for instance, the water school in Qigong, it's a more gradual process of you cultivating the life force energy, a more safer practice, actually, you know, in many ways. Whereas the fire schools, that's generating the chi more quicker. And if you're not at a more stable place, there's many people that can have health complications, psychotic breaks, all kinds of things. That's the same thing some people say with the psychedelics or the teaching plants. There's a phenomena that they call spontaneous Kundalini awakening. That was a big phenomena which really went down in the 1960s with the emergence of the hippie movement and all that. When you look at spontaneous Kundalini awakening, and when a lot of Westerners were being introduced to, for instance, Kundalini yoga, a lot of them did not have the ground-based work set for them. They didn't deal with what we were saying, what I was even saying earlier, the 3 chakras. They weren't really dealing with the foundational work with themselves. So when they started to have an amplification of their energy, where overnight they were open to different dimensions and things. For a lot of people, when they weren't ready, that was caused many psychotic breaks. Many people that were hospitalized and given medication, because now they're labeled schizophrenic, bipolar, what have you, when all actuality is not a chemical imbalance for that person at that per se, but that client really could be the big majority of people in the mental ward. A lot of them experiencing Kundalini awakening or experiencing a spiritual awakening where modern science and modern medicine does not have a particular system to deal with someone that's dealing with that. That's why, again, you had the shaman. You always had shamans. And the shaman is just a word that describes one who could see in darkness. All right, one who could see in the darkness, or stemming from the word stemming from Siberia. But there's many words or titles for different medicine men and medicine women around the world. And they were very key responsible for the community and the tribe to be able to allow them to teach them how to amplify their vessel or to amplify their energy. They were the healers. The shamans were the healers. They were also the seers. They had a big effect. They played many roles. They did the role of prophecy. They were able to foresee things. They were able to say, hey, or even something as simple as even maybe the modern, I mean, how you have modern day weathermen, forecasters. They were the forecasters even on the weather back in the day. So, they would know. They were very connected to nature and very connected to the nature and the elements and all those things. So they understood the patterns and the cycles of nature. So they were like, okay, yes, we're having a big storm going on. We have to prepare for this, or we're at this age where this is going on with the earth. So they were very connected to the earth. They played prophecy. They also were the ones that were able to go in between the physical world and the spiritual world. You know what I mean? So they were able to have direct access to other dimensions, and this is important because, a lot of the shamans who I even worked with in the past, in the ceremonies I went to, a lot of the brothers and sisters who I've brought to these ceremonies with me, they have reported and told me straight up, people who have passed away or relatives who have passed away, who they miss and care for so much that, it was one sister recently, real good sister. Her mother just passed away, about almost 3-4 months ago. And she was devastated by her mother's loss, the loss of her mom's. And when she went to her first ayahuasca ceremony, she literally, one second, they pick up this plant, turn it over here, this plant out here. She literally, right? She literally invoked, she made the whatchamacallit, I'm just thinking of the word right now. She made the intention. Her intention before she even started the ayahuasca ceremony was that she wanted to contact her mother who passed away. Not only did her mother come to her during the first ayahuasca experience, but her mother, her aunt, and her grandmother. And they were able to give her great advice. She was able to make closure with her mother. Interesting is that when she first seen her mother, she said that she only seen the energetic outlining of her. All right. She said when she did the second ayahuasca ceremony, she said that she was able to literally see her mother much more clearer, and that she even felt like something equivalent to like body heat coming from her mother's spirit. And her mother was able to tell her advice and all that. So again, the shamans had direct access to these different dimensions. And when they taught the people in the tribes and in their community how to do it as well. It gave them access to different dimensions, and that was displayed even with Black Panther, and how T'Challa was drunk the what they call the heart-shaped plant, which was like equivalent to ayahuasca or psilocybin mushroom, and he was able to have direct access to the spiritual ancestral realm. And those things are real. What they showed in that movie at that time was it depicted very accurately. You know what I mean? It was depicted very accurately. And when a person is ready, even on these ceremonies, when you deal with these teaching plants and these fungi, when you step to the with a level of reverence, with respect, you know, and understand that the earth that you're living on, to have this human experience, to have even this experience as God manifested in various form in this holographic universe, or this system here, to have reverence for even the game itself, you are able to have more connection to improve, if we could say it that, you know what I mean? So for instance, I don't want to say anything that's going to confuse people. So say for instance, the Mario Brothers. All right. Look at Nintendo. For those who was dealing with Nintendo and dealing with Super Mario would eat that damn mushroom, and he would grow in size. He would have a protective type of thing around his body. Nothing to the mushroom baddie guy, all the baddie guys couldn't touch him and all that, and he became Super Mario. You know, we can become super beings ourselves when we are able to utilize the various different things out there, be it yoga, be it qigong, be it teaching plants, fungi, meditation, whatever you need to do, fasting, whatever you need to do to be able to amplify your vibration. Because people get dogmatic sometimes, and people get very attached to their particular system of spirituality or their particular path. And a lot of times because it's working for them, which is okay, God bless them, they become attached, and they think sometimes that's the only way. My thing is, as various personalities that you have out there, as various different people that you have out there in existence, that's how I believe that's how as many spiritual paths a person can take. There's numerous ways to get back to the source, in my personal opinion. Teaching plants and fungi is just another tool. You know, you have certain people in the psychedelic community or the teaching plant fungi community, entheogen community, and sometimes it becomes dogmatic, just like any other community, you know, just like any other type of religious structure sometimes. And some people become codependent even on the teaching plants and the fungi. And they look at it and say like, oh, wow, this is going to save the world, or this is the greatest thing since, I don't say since sliced white bread. I say since sprouted motherfucking sprouted bread. You know, it's more alkaline. So actually get yourself the Ezekiel bread. You know, it's usually frozen in the frozen section for the more healthier for your gut and for you to digest that. You know, you don't want no bleached daggone white flour, you know. But again, we're dealing with a lot of you know, I'm not even going to go there. But anyways, but again, yeah, like I was saying though, there's people that even get dogmatic. All right. And if it was the case that the world would wake up from just eating a mushroom or having a psychedelic or whatever, the world should have been overnight daggone healed and turned around already. But that's not the case. The case is when you use these teaching plants and fungi like any other tool, it's how you use the tool and how do you apply that tool to your everyday life. Some people have mystical, wonderful experience, and they go for even through different dimensions and all kinds of things, see dead relatives and all those things. But if they're not able to implement that or incorporate that within their daily life inside their being, then it just becomes an experience just like any other experience. You know what I mean? It might be amazing or whatever, but us humans sometimes, or not just humans, but a lot of sentient beings out there, sometimes we have this thing called spiritual amnesia, where we sometimes get these fleeting moments of knowing that we're divine, and then next moment we forget, you know, and we go back to this so-called third dimensional limited experience when we're multi-dimensional beings, you know, and then all of a sudden we're playing the game again. All right. So it's important for people, when they have these very enlightening experiences, how do you bring that back into your everyday world? What were the lessons that you learned? How can you remind yourself of the lessons? Do you need to journal? Do you need to write down certain quotes that, or certain feelings that came from the experience? Do you pin those things around your home or your apartment as reminders? Should you microdose? Should you actually do a monthly ceremonies for yourself to keep that consistent vibration building and growing and cultivating? All right. Because some people, again, they get dogmatic, even within the psychedelic community, and feel that teaching plants or the fungi is the only way, and that's it. But if you're not doing the work, even within them teaching plants and fungi, then it becomes a crutch like anything else. It becomes codependent like anything else. That's the same thing even with people in other communities. You know, you have some people who might be in the Buddhist community or the Hindu community or the church or whatever, and sometimes they get very limited to think that their way is the only way. It could work for you, but also there might be things outside of your church or mosque or places where you can learn other things to benefit your spiritual path, your evolution, your growth, your connection to the divine, your truth, all that. It's interesting because I have a lot of family members who are both Christian, Muslim, and I see people that are becoming more open. Now I see a lot of my Muslim brothers and sisters that are very Orthodox Muslims that are now looking into yoga, that are now looking into crystals, now looking into different things of that nature. Because beforehand it would be like, no, that's shaitan. That's, you know, you can't deal with that. But you have to learn that we can learn from different cultures. We can learn from different spiritual systems, and we can adapt these things and put them in your own spiritual knapsack or book bag or whatever, and use that as a tool for your own development. You know what I mean? It's not about being dogmatic. You know, some people look from the spiritual community really down people who might take the shaman path or the teaching plant and fungi path and say, oh, y'all are spiritual cheating. You have to do it this way, do it that way. I feel what your spirit calls you to do. You have an inner intelligence. You have an inner, what you may call, what the discernment. You have your own inner discernment or your own type of thing that can measure what you need. And that comes from a level of trust within yourself, a trust within the universe, and a trust in the Great Spirit itself. You know, when a person sees that, say, for instance, and why I said, I remember I kind of went off for a second, but even when a person, for instance, looks at this age that we're living in as the age of Kali Yuga, for instance, the seeders of different planets, you had seeders, you have many star brothers and star systems, star brothers and sisters that are our family, that come from different constellations, that are very older than humanity and have gone through their many billions of years and trillions of years of evolution. All right. It's like your big brother or your big sister that already went through puberty, and you haven't got any peach fuzz down there yet. They know a lot of things about just the physical development, the emotional development. They've gone through the teenage years and stuff, and they say, oh, you haven't gone through that yet, but these are things that you might experience. You know, that's the same thing as your star brothers and your star sisters out there. They went through certain development. And they went through certain things to say, okay, well, we did that on our planet already before. We did nuclear war. We did that game already. We did this already, you know. And it's interesting because everything is cycles. So you have to understand or overstand or understand that, you know, we had remnants of nuclear war in the past. When we talk about Atlantis, especially when we even talk about Lemuria, where I was listening to this podcast the other day, I forget this guy's name, but he was talking about anthropologists who were talking about the history of Lemuria, and they were saying that certain civilizations in the past, including Lemuria, weren't warlike civilizations, that there were no remnants or no artifacts of destructive weapons. So we have to understand even certain ages. Again, when we talk about the golden age and different ages and even different star systems, there's certain evolved beings in certain ages where people just don't have the adversity or the aggressiveness that we see today. All right. They were more evolved. So there were certain seeders out there that already mastered the art of space travel, that already mastered the art of being able to go through interdimensional portals, to use their macabres, to use their light vehicles, and to be able to travel in various means. And these seeders were ones who brought different genetics here, who were able to seed the planet with the ayahuasca, with the iboga, with different things, because they knew certain ages that people would need these medicines, that people would be so far from the great spirit, from their higher self, that they would need actual reminders, that they would need actual natural technology to amplify their vibration because they were at such a low vibration. All right. So they were seeders to bring, like, especially for ages like we're in right now, to be like, okay, the age of discord, the age of confusion, all that they need Mama Earth to produce certain boons or certain gifts that would amplify their vibration to a place where they would naturally have their higher self kick in. All right. And this stuff is real. It's real. The medicine is real. Now, there's some people might not need the medicine, and that's a beautiful thing. These are very high vibrational people that are coming into this planet, and they don't need the assistance of those things. And their sole job is coming into this earth already knowing who they are, already knowing what job they have to do to assist with their fellow brothers and sisters and things. But those who might need to decalcify the pineal gland, might need that assistance, these teaching plants and fungi are brilliant for that. They're natural technology that will bring a person into amplifying their vibration. And for instance, the psilocybin mushroom. Psilocybin mushroom, I've been for over 10 years. And there's different mushrooms that have different characteristics to them, all right, that serve different purposes, that have their own energetic signature to them, all right. So for instance, when we look at, say for instance, golden caps, or when we look at things of like the famous penis envy, you know what I mean, they all have their different energetic signature to them. The penis envy is considered to be one of the top most potent psilocybin mushrooms, you know, and that one you don't even need to really take so much to have a very profound experience. I remember the most I took with that was 20 grams. I took 20 grams of penis envy and 5 grams of golden caps together. And that, you know, at that point, that was one of my most deepest experiences with mushrooms. And I have to give credit to great man to look up and research, because I met this brother, this elder, almost 5 years ago, and I was invited to speak at UMass Amherst. I'm from Boston. I'm from the Beantown. I'm from Roxbury, and I was invited to speak at UMass Amherst on the subject of urban shamanism. and that was the first time I met Baba Kalindi Iyi, and we had a wonderful, wonderful. And it was funny, before I even was speaking there, I had this elder named Brother Hank, and he's another good resource to look up in regard to this subject. Don't do that. That's my little man there. Don't do that. Don't do that. You messing with your mama's plan, all right? You can't do that this way, all right? I have to put this up here because you're dealing with this, all right? Yeah. So, Hank has a show called on Blog Talk Radio on Thursday nights. It's called Crystals, Magnets, and Pyramids. And he has excellent guests on his show that talk about all kinds of different things, particularly healing and amplifying the vibration. He made this particular orgonite piece for me, which is a very powerful piece. It ever so often, it just sends waves of healing energy to my heart chakra. And he put these actual pieces on the back of it recently, and he calls it oh, actually somebody made a comment here. I'm trying to look on how to read. I'm pretty new to this technology stuff. I'm really old school, and I'm a young man, but I'm still very have a very old spirit in me. But I just bought some spores. Very excited. Word, very good, Anita. I'm so proud of you. I'm glad that you're getting them, and teach your friends and teach your family and people out there how to grow their own, and make them aware of this sacred medicine. It's the time, and people have to get out of the fear state. You know, a lot of people are scared because I don't know what the medicine might do to me or what might come up. You have to trust the universe and trust yourself and trust the experience. And trust that the fungi is very old. It's ancient. We have to understand that, like I said, the cedars, they brought these spores and stuff from constellation to constellation, from planet to planet. And these cedars brought these things as tools to enlighten different life forms across the galaxies, across the universe. So these things are very ancient, and they are they know more about yourself than even yourself. You know what I mean? So they come to you with all kinds of lessons and different things about yourself, especially when you're open. When you walk to it humbly and with a level of openness, then you'll see all kinds of wonderful healing and magic happen. But we live in a society that is very built on control. I gotta control everything. I gotta control this, control that. And that's why when I encounter a lot of people from the so-called conscious community, if we want to call it that, when I tell people, well, well, why don't you go on a shaman journey? Why don't you try this mushroom or this ayahuasca or this iboga or this San Pedro or whatever? No, I don't know what might happen to me or whatever. So what you're telling me, my friend, when I think of people when they say this, what you're telling me, my friend, is that you're scared of your own self. That's what you're really telling me. Because when we deal with shadow work, when you deal with shamanism, in shamanism they have something called shadow work. All right. And shadow work is really on dealing with the unconscious mind. When you deal with psychology, you have people like Sigmund Freud and Jung, and they talk about the collective unconsciousness. You know what I mean? The symbolic type of type of things that are connected to all humanity. You know, and what's going on in your subconscious mind? Well, how does that operate? How are things that were fed to you since a young boy and young girl, and how does all those things play out to you within the working of your mind? You know, how does subliminal messages on the media, all these things from society, how all these things play out in your mind on a very subconscious level? So people are scared of their self a lot of times, and they're scared of what type of trauma, what type of things are lurking inside their subconscious and all that. And people don't want to look vulnerable. They don't want to look at a level of that they actually might start crying or letting certain things out. But that's part of the healing, and part of the healing is a vulnerability of learning to not be so structured on feeling that you have to be in control at every goddamn second. All right. Sometimes you got to learn to let go. And that's a big part of even the process of dealing with these teaching plants and these fungi. And I find that very deep. You know what I mean? I find that extremely deep, that people are scared of themselves. And these are the people that claim that they're conscious. But if you're conscious, yet you don't want to look at a certain part of yourself, that's not conscious, my friend. Stepping into consciousness is embracing the dark, the light, is embracing everything that's going on with you. You know what I mean? And that's what shadow work is really about. The shamanism were, in all actuality, the first psychologists, because when you look at the shadow work, it's going back to those times, like a level of psychotherapy. It's going back to those times where the trauma happened. It's going back to those times where they call soul retrieval, where you're literally going back to those parts of yourself where your psyche broke off from your collective whole. You know, we have mechanisms within us when it comes to trauma, when it comes to certain things that were, don't do that, Kismet. When it comes down to, don't do that. When it comes down to certain things that were so traumatic for a person, the all creator, the great spirit, you know, when we look at the dynamics to ourselves, when it comes down to a level of trauma, there's things that are so traumatic, especially even, for instance, a car crash or something. There's a part of you, your spirit, that your consciousness that does not want to feel that pain in its full extreme force. So that's when you see or talk about a lot of people that have out of body experiences, when they're an accident, when they're going through a tense level of trauma. You know what I mean? It was this movie which I can't stand because it was very negative. But I like to see our people in a positive light, especially when it comes to these Hollywood movies, because a lot of this stuff again deals with our subconscious and programs our subconscious. So, but the movie that reminded me of this was that movie Precious, where the young lady was getting molested by her parents and all that. And when she was getting molested, what happened in the movie? She would go to an alternate place. Her mind, she would go to that alternate place in her mind to escape the pain, so she wouldn't have to deal with the current situation, the current pain, the rape that she was going through. And she would go to this alternate place for her own personal sanity and her own personal survival. That's what happens with people when they go through trauma. They go through trauma and they would leave their body. They would be parts of their psyche that would break off. So what happens is when you do shadow work, when you do soul retrieval, you go back to that place where you had the trauma, and it allows you to make yourself whole again. You're putting yourself back together. That 4-year-old, that 2-year-old that got raped or got abused or whatever, you're able to have that part of your spirit that broke off and say, well, little 4-year-old so-and-so, you can come back now. You can come back to me, to your adult self now. We can embrace, we can be back home now. And usually people that do this shadow work or this soul retrieval work, when they come back from this trance-like type of experience, they talk about how they feel more whole, how they feel the depression is going away, the anxiety is going away, all this stuff. You know what I mean? This is how it works in a lot of ways when you're in ceremony at ayahuasca, mama ayahuasca, or when you're dealing with the teaching plant of fungi, when you're setting it up in a ritualistic format. You know what I mean? You go to those places, those traumatic places, and sometimes we are not even aware of the trauma that we hold. That's why sometimes when a person's going through ceremony, all of a sudden they're crying for no reason. They don't know why they're crying, or laughing for no reason, and they're not knowing why they're laughing. But all they do know is that they're having a release, that there was some type of change going on inside them. You see? And that's important. That's how he even deals with the level of addiction, because you have to understand, you have science even backing up the teaching plants and the fungi now. So you have places like Johns Hopkins University, New York State, different places. So we're at a renaissance right now. It's a very interesting time we're in, because you have to understand, at the height of the 60s, when you deal with the psychedelic movement, when you deal with the hippie movement, you have to understand there was a big shift happening with the earth. You had the Black Power movement. You had people waking up culturally, all kinds of different things going on. But at the same time, the forces opposed to awakening, they was very easy to take out black leaders, for instance. Like my aunt, one of my aunts was a Black Panther in the 60s. She was one of the people in the Boston chapter here that was actually doing cartoons for the paper. And she was actually doing, artwork for their paper back then. All right. Now, it was very easy. I always heard about our own U.S. government taking out leaders, black leaders that were no threat to the government, but yet just trying to improve their communities. People like Fred Hampton and others that were killed in the middle of the wee hours of the morning. You know, it's very easy for the government to assassinate black leaders or indigenous people or Moors or people of color. But when it came to their own Europeans, children waking up, they didn't know what to do. When the European children started to decalcify their pineal glands, and when they started to actually go on these psychedelic journeys, and their whole mind started to expand, their whole spirit started to expand, they started to say, wow, why are we destroying the earth? Why are we digging all this oil out of the earth? Why are we deforesting and cutting down these trees? Don't you know the trees are alive? Don't you know? Why are we being racist towards our fellow black brothers and sisters? Why are we going to the war in Vietnam? Why are we spending all this money for a false education? They literally turned their back on the system, and because of that was a threat to the system, and they couldn't just kill their own children like they was killing people of color. So what they did was they had to bring up the propaganda campaign and bring in the so-called war on drugs, and have CIA agents like Charles Manson and others that have a atmosphere of fear surrounding so-called psychedelics or teaching plants and fungi. That's what happened, and that's what was the shutdown of the hippie movement. Okay, now we're having a resurgence. You're having a renaissance within the teaching plants and the fungi, and of course the so-called powers of that be that illegal made it all these teaching plants and fungi illegal. And we know, first of all, there's a difference between what we call real drugs and teaching plants and fungi. Okay, there's a real difference, my friends. And the real because I come from the inner city of Boston. I'm from Roxbury, and I seen what crack did to ghettos across America. I was a young boy in the 80s seeing all kinds of crack addicts in the neighborhood. Grown men and women becoming fiends. I had friends of mine that sold crack because it devastated our communities. You know what I mean? So I know what real drugs look like, and I know what it did to destabilize communities. But I'm not talking about real drugs. I'm talking about teaching plants and teaching fungi that have been used by medicine men and medicine women across the world for thousands, if not millions, if not billions of years. Okay, so that's a big difference. And when I started building with Baba Kalindi, for instance, when I was at UMass Amherst, and we met each other there and build on a panel there, and when I invited him to Boston to do a talk for the people here, and when he did this excellent slideshow that showed without a doubt how these teaching plants and fungi have been a part of our history throughout the world. You know, that's when I knew I was on the right path. That's when I knew it was a great history with people of color across the world that were using different teaching plants and fungi. For instance, in Kemet or Egypt or Timeri, you know, they use the blue lotus flower, you know what I mean, as a part of the Osiris rite, or the Osirian rite. You know, they would wrap you as a mummy, put you in the daggone sarcophagus, you know, the coffin, and you would eat the blue lotus flower, and you would go on a journey, and you would go to do the duat, or what you call the spirit world, and deal with the ancestors, and deal with your lower self, and deal with all those things. So Kemet or Egypt was very familiar with the psychedelics, and very familiar in using them as a way to advance their civilization. They also had their own version in the Middle East of the Middle Eastern version of ayahuasca, you know, and that was the combination of Syrian rue and the acacia. You know what I mean? And I was blessed to be able to drink the acacia root and the Syrian root and the acacia before. And I've drunk that many of times, and it's very good medicine. And it activates the DMT. Same as the ayahuasca in the jungles with the copy and the copy vine and, you know, their plant, you know. So each continent, each part of the world had their version of it. And even I learned, even doing the studies with the acacia was very much used in the Middle East. I mean, if you look at it and do the research, the acacia was used in very much references in the Bible. You know, they talk about the acacia being the burning bush with Moses. They talk about the acacia being connected to even Freemasonry. You know, believe it or not, you know, when you have the Freemasons and they deal with their third degree rite, when they deal with their particular ceremony, they talk about this figure called Harem Abith. And Harem Abith was the architect, the grand architect, to build the structure of King Solomon's temple. All right, and Harem Abith encountered the three ruffians, and he told the three ruffians that, hey, you know, y'all not worthy of the teachings. You're not ready. And they killed him. You know, they struck him on the head. I think the head, the shoulder, I think in the knee or something like that. I'm not sure, but it was very symbolic, even where they struck him. You know, particularly in the forehead, being the pineal gland and all that. But when they killed him, they buried him in an unmarked grave, except for the branch of the acacia tree. All right, a branch of the acacia. Even the symbol of with the Masons, with the with what they call the square and compass. Above the square and compass, they have the leaf, which is the acacia tree there. So I forget the guy's name, this European, but he came up with the lodge behind the Egyptian lodge. And when they come to the 33 degree level, they part of the 33 degree rite is that they would have to drink the acacia. You know, that was part of the initiation. So we have to understand that these things, especially when I was building with Kalindi, these were secret societies that definitely utilized the teaching plants and the fungi. When you look at the Pope, they're dressed up as the mushroom, as the Marita Muscario mushroom. You know what I mean? With the red and white. You know, they're mimicking the mushroom. You know, when you look at the structures of the Catholic Church, even when Baba Kalindi showed that, the architects, they were all part of these secret societies. They built it within the actual structures of the cathedrals. So when you walk in, you're walking into the entrance of the mushroom. If you have the eyes to see, you'll see how the artist was able to interweave these teaching plants and stuff within the structure itself. So the initiates were able to see that. You know, the people, the laymen, the ones, the novice, the ones that are just regular churchgoers or regular people that go to the mosque and stuff, they had no clue that that the higher priests and the imams and all of them were using this. This was just amongst the more adapts, the adapt chambers, you know, the adepts. You know what I mean? So, but they all used it. The Sufi mystics, the imams, they would use the Syrian rue and the acacia as well. So this was part of all these cultural traditions. You know what I mean? As you know, in Hinduism, when we deal with India, they deal with soma. You know what I mean? And the Greece, they dealt with also their level of the psychedelics, with the oracles of Delphi, you know, and the Elysian rites and stuff. So we have to understand it's part of our culture. But when I started to see how Kalindi was even breaking it down in Africa, Mama Africa over there, El Kibalan, you know, we would see that they were using, it's a big tradition with the Maasai warriors, with the Dogons. That's how the Dogons were able to communicate with Sirius in such an accurate way, because, you know, the Europeans are still baffled because they consider these people very primitive, in that when they go in, when NASA seen their accuracy within their caves, with the depiction of our solar system and the rings of Saturn and Sirius B, all this information on the cave walls that they painted with before the creation of the so-called telescope. But we have to understand, we didn't, black folk, indigenous people, we didn't build technology. We understand that nature had already technology for us already. You know, it's that the European did not know how to use, most Europeans did not know how to use the natural technology. You know, I hate to say, but it's the truth. You know, they were coming from more of a logical standpoint, you know, a more left brain standpoint. And because of that, because of how their culture, especially with the Roman Catholic Church, and how that was really targeted for them to be in a serf mode, then we understand that they only gave them outward religion. You know, they didn't teach them how to go inside and give them the mystical experience. It wasn't only, it was only for the the Moors, for instance, when the Moors came in to Europe and ruled Europe for over 800 years, a lot of that esoteric knowledge came to them with their first universities over there, like the University of Cordova in different places. That's when they started bringing into a lot of mystic arts to the Europeans over that time. And that's when they started having their European Renaissance and started having, you know, the Victorian times and all that. That was a result of a lot of North Africans going over there and educating them even on the many esoteric mystic traditions. Before then, Europeans were 90% illiterate, and you were dealing with the serfs. All right. That's why a lot of Europeans were very happy when the Moors came in and started teaching them a lot of these things, you know, and setting up universities and different things. It was only the church that were mad that they were coming in. And that's where you had the Crusades and all that, because you're dealing with power and political moves. All right. A lot of these things are very interesting. But the thing is also, when we're talking about European history, at least along the lines of the mystic tradition, the only ones that really who were dealing with more earth-based type of practices, the Druids, the Celtics and all them. That's where they were. That's where the time frame where, again, they were learning things for people of color at that time to get them more earth-based and connected. All right, and that's where you have the phenomena of the fairy traditions and all these the nymphs and all these earth spirits. All right, and then anytime when you see a population of people, I don't care what nationality or ethnic group, when you see them more connected to the earth, that's where you see more people awakening, and you have Mama Earth at a more balanced state. When you look anytime where spirituality comes from a place of coming materialistically, or coming from a place of downgrading the energy of women or the goddess energy and all that, you're going to have problems. And that's what happened to the big conception of the New World Order during the Roman Catholic Church. in the inception of them breaking down the divine feminine, breaking down the mystic tradition, of breaking down the actual experience, because at that point it just became a level of control. Now you have to go through a priest to have, or the pope or whoever, now to have a connection with God. Now only these ones can forgive you of your sin and all these other things, whereas beforehand you're talking about people that, and even again, Catholic Church, they know behind closed doors they were dealing with the real science. So of course they were dealing with the mushroom. Of course, there's even symbolic gestures of eat the wafer in the so-called wine being a gesture of eating Jesus. That was a gesture of eating the mushroom. So again, this is talking about control, and that's very wicked, because when you have knowledge and wisdom and stuff like that and gifts, you share it with the world to improve it. But what they're doing, on the other hand, they're hoarding it. They're hoarders. They're saying, okay, we're gonna use this knowledge for only our own population, or for our own intentions. You know. So again, we have the rest of the so-called 1%ers. So have the rest of the people out there be your slaves and be dumbed down, where now, and don't give them the teaching plants and fungi, because again, that empower them, or that allow them to have direct to their spirit guides, their ancestors, their higher self, and therefore they can't be controlled. So it's by design. It's not a coincidence that they even try to put it as a Scheduled 1 drug and all that. But you have to understand, everything has its cycles, just like you have the cycle that we're in right now, Kali Yuga, just like you have the cycle of the seasons, springtime, wintertime, all these different things. Nature goes through its cycles. So as above, so below. And we're going through the cycle, and no one can rule forever, and no empire can rule forever. You know what I mean? And, you know, people that talk about the Gnostics, and those who talk about the archons and the demiurge and different things of that nature, nothing, even celestial beings can't rule forever. Everything has its own season, you know? Everything has its own season. And when you talk a lot about the solar flares and a lot of things that's happening with the sun, my friend, we're talking about great DNA activation. We're talking about junk DNA being activated, and there's certain things that nature will do and can do, and there's no so-called political power or Illuminati or anything that can stop that. I'm sorry, your technology and your so-called power can't overdo the Neter or the Nataru. I'm sorry, it just ain't gonna happen. And it happens many of other times. And humans can't get to an egotistical point to think that they're stronger than nature, because this earth has already been destroyed almost 5-6 times already. So we can't get on our high horse, y'all. And the powers that be know that. They know that. They're not going to get to that point of getting so goddamn egotistical, because when the sun does its thing, the sun does its thing, you know, and there's solar flares changing energy up big time. That's why when you look up the solar flares and you see what's going on around that time, you'll see that during those days, people are erratic. You have people, sometimes if you just look at their behavior, if they're not at a high vibrational frequency, they're just making motherfuckers literally go crazy around you. So these are the times that you're living in. And I don't give a damn how many chemtrails they put in the sky. You know, you're not going to block out the sun. You know, that just shows you how crazy they are. They'll put the crazy heavy metals in the sky, and they have it even fall on their ass and their children's ass too. Because some people think, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to have these underground bunkers and just live in inner earth. That's how crazy they are. You know what I mean? But no one can stop the time. Vibration and frequency, that's where it's at. You know, even Nikola Tesla, like I said before, has said that. And vibration and frequency is real. And that's what's happening with this sun. So it's an upgrade. And don't be scared of the upgrade. And don't be surprised if you start having certain supernatural powers come out of you. Don't get freaked out. That's why You have, it's not a coincidence that the major movies in America right now are the major movies in America, the ones that are top budget, the ones that are making most money are superhero movies. It's not a coincidence, my friends. It's not that just us 80 kids or less 70 kids have grown up now and we just want to see all the cartoons that we grew up with. It's not that. It's that too. Don't get me wrong. Can't wait till Thundercats and all that shit come out. I was thrilled when came out and all that. But what it is like what I said, Sigmund Freud, Jung, when we talk about the collective unconsciousness, what's going on collectively in the unconscious mind, we are all connected, you know? So what is going on unconsciously is that we know we are changing. We know we're turning into X-Men right now. We know we're going through our inner, our super science shit is coming up right now. All right? You know what I mean? We know that's happening. Just like I said from that book before, Faces in the Smoke. People in Haiti had the secret society of flying men. You know, what you have to understand, a lot of things are censored here in America. A lot of things are censored in other parts of the world as well. But when you deal with certain governments that are geared on keeping control and keeping things the way they are, you have only a couple of when you deal with all these for instance, the media, all right? And when you deal with these corporations, you only have a few corporations that control all the different media out there. And they're the ones that you have to go through of what they want the world to know about and what they don't, what they want on the news, what they don't, all these other things, you know? So there's a lot of things that are censored. And believe it or not, you know, the things that you might see in other parts of the world that are very commonplace. Like you might go to other parts of the world, like the Himalayan mountains or different places. And when people talk about, for instance, levitation or flying, or for instance, turning your body into light and stuff, those things are very commonplace. You know, or if you go to a certain part of the world and you talk to them about the star brothers and star sisters, they're like, oh yeah. Oh, that's very commonplace. We see orbs or interdimensional beings that come in and out of our village all the time. You know what I mean? But when you live in a place where it's very censored, we are under mind control, the majority of the people out there. So when you talk about these things, the first thing that comes to their mind is that, what? That's pseudoscience, or how can you prove that, or whatever. Things that I'm talking about, a lot of these things are on other dimensions. So a lot of the modern science, the modern science don't even have the technology to catch up to deal with some of the things that these ancient indigenous people know about. They just don't have the technology right now. You know what I mean? And if not, they're saying it's pseudoscience, they're thinking, like you said, they think we're fucking crazy. Or if not thinking you're crazy, they're thinking you're possessed. Oh, you have some demon, or, you know, something's on you or whatever. And that's not the case. And I'm not going to say that demon possession or low vibrational beings aren't real. They are real. You definitely have interdimensional beings of low frequency that like to feed off of people. That stuff happens. But that's not the case that I'm talking about right here. You know, the case that I'm talking about right here is that we are much more than what we think, you know? And when we start to tap into what the Hindus call the siddhis, the SIDDHI, these are natural abilities beyond the five senses that is all encoded in all of our DNA. And that's part of our experience, our human experience. We supposed to have these abilities. But again, if a person does not know how to turn them on or activate them, or if you're in a time where intentionally they're doing things to mess with your abilities and to dumb you down, then you just got to be aware of that. You got to take the steps that will decalcify your pineal gland. Take the steps that will be able to enhance your vibrational frequency. All right. But like I was saying, don't be surprised as time goes by that you'll see more people with these abilities. I have a friend of mine, and this really happened. And I'm so excited when I hear about things like this because we're under so much mind control that we don't even believe that we can do these things. You know, it's so out of our everyday experience, you know what I mean, that we doubt it, you know? So I remember one of my friends, she was running real fast in the morning one day, right? She was jogging and she was in that zone. They call it the runner's high sometime, when you're just in that zone. She was running real fast, and all of a sudden she had a levitation experience. She got off the earth about a couple of inches off the ground and was in the air, not high in the air, but a couple of inches off the ground for a couple of seconds. She was blown away. She was scared as hell too, because she did not know what happened. You know what I mean? She was like, what the hell was just that? You know, and she was looking around to see if anybody seen what just happened, and she couldn't register it in their mind. It was like too much for her. She was like, what the hell was that? And the thing that was so deep is that she went home and she told her mother about what happened. And when she told her mother about what happened, what was her mother's response is deep, because her mother was like, girl, don't you know that ain't nothing? She started laughing. She said, don't you know that I did the same thing in my early 20s? She says that particular gift runs in our family. So I was blown away, and her brother had a levitation experience too when he was running. So you have to understand that there's even certain magical bloodlines. That's why our people back in the day, there was so much emphasis on bloodlines and royal blood and all this other things. What they were really talking about were alchemical equations. They were talking about literally combinations of certain blood that could activate supernatural powers. You know what I mean? So you had certain star brothers that come from this constellation or that constellation, and they say, okay, the ones from Orion and maybe the ones from this constellation over here, for instance, maybe Palladium, whatever, their two bloodstreams that come together, it produces this magical thing or whatever, you know? That's why Baba Kalindi, the elder, I felt this was very interesting. He made a point when he was building one time. He was talking about currency, and currency, when we talk about here on this planet, is backwards, because we're talking about paper. We're just talking about dead presidents on paper and saying this is currency. All right. Whereas, you know, the original currency on this planet was dealing with trade, bartering. I have this skill, you have that skill, this, that, and the other. But even more advanced life forms throughout the cosmos, when they deal with currency, when they deal with their level of trade, it deals with genetics. It deals with a level of this star brother coming and encountering this life form on that planet and saying, wow, I love the quality of these particular beings on this planet. They're very good with this, or they're very good with that. I would love to upgrade my own body with this particular gene. Because we're talking about star brothers and star sisters that were very advanced geneticists. You know what I mean? And even if you go in the works of looking at Inky, a lot of that information from ancient Sumeria, modern day Iraq, a lot of that they talk about a lot of star brothers and sisters who were advanced geneticists. You know what I mean? So we have to understand that, and even look at the phenomena of the so-called Zeta Reticulations, or the Greys, and how they go into cow mutilation, and a lot of that comes down with them being a more robotic type of race, or what we call more advanced race or creation that deals with more of like a transhumanist cyborg type of race. Now, from my studies in galactic history, I've learned that they lack a emotional body, and thus do not have a macabre. All right. And that's why there's a lot of life forms out there that are very intrigued and interested in humans, because we have something called emotions. All right. energy and motion. We have emotions. If for those who are Star Trek fans, as you know, you had Captain Kirk, but you also had Spock. And Spock, his particular race, they lacked emotion. They didn't understand emotion. That's why Spock, when he looked at Captain Kirk was like, you know, he's like, you know, I can't stand Captain Kirk. You know what I mean? Because this is why he's just too irrational. You know, he has this emotion. I don't understand this emotion. So the Zeta Reticula, or the Greys, they don't have emotion. That's why a lot of people say when they claim of being abducted by these particular beings, they said there's a coldness, a real coldness about them. There's a level of just no connection. A lot of them. I'm not gonna say they're all like that because you have variations. But a majority of people that say they encounter with them said there's a very logical beings, but a very lack of emotion. All right. So and also within my studies, they said they have mastered genetics. So they no longer went through the level of procreating through sex or coming through giving birth of that way, but more from a genetic cloning type or grafting type of level. That's where they say the cattle mutilation comes in. And you can't dispute the cattle mutilation is because if you look at how they cut open these cows, it's with precision and no blood, no nothing. It's just, hey, thank you, love. Thank you so much. Thank you, love. There's no level of when they take the organs out and different things, there's no blood spillage, and I mean it's super clean. And a lot of people that study cow mutilations, they're like definitely they're dealing with a high type of technology. And some people with the studies of this is saying they're going with the cow mutilations for their attempt to upgrade themselves for their own particular genetic survival. So again, a lot of beings sometimes look at genetics as currency and how they can interact with various life forms as a form of upgrades. All right. So it's interesting. This stuff is very interesting. And this reality is much more than what we think. It's much more than what we think. I had an encounter with a gray once, 2 of them. And they came to me in my bathroom, actually. And they came to me when I was on a shaman journey. And yeah, more than gold, that melanin, you already know. They came to me when I was in my bathroom. And this is the first time I encountered the Greys. They was about almost 4 feet. They was very small, and they showed themselves for a second. Certain beings are interdimensional. Certain beings can phase in and out of certain dimensions. But I remember I was taken aback. I didn't expect them to show up like that. And I was very scared at the moment. I was like, ah! I mean, because they used to take it off guard. It's funny because people could say, you know, wow, I'm ready for anything or whatever. And that's cool if you're a very brave and courageous person. Well, salute to you. All respect to you, brother or sister, if y'all can handle that. But sometimes because we're used to a certain reality, maybe because we're used to seeing certain things, right? Used to seeing maybe people that look like us, humans or whatever. When you see different life forms that look totally different than you, I don't care if you call yourself the most courageous person in the world, that shit might take you back for a second. Now, if they would visit me again, maybe I might not be so frightened. Maybe I'm getting more used to because this was a while ago too. Now, with a lot of my journeys and stuff, I'm becoming more used to seeing beings that don't look human or seeing other things. So now, you know, maybe now I might have a different response to them. But there's different beings out there, and when you encounter them, you do have to stay with your I am presence. You do have to stay with your celestial sovereign status, knowing that you are part of the all and that you have a sovereign right as a galactic traveler, interdimensional being yourself. And when you stand at a place like that, then I don't care who it is. I don't care even if it's God, they have to respect that. And that goes into what true enlightenment is. Because even if you look at the signs of Siddhartha or Gautama Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha, there's been many Buddhas, but the current one from this age was Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni, if you look at the story of his enlightenment, what happened to him? What happened to him? I'll tell you what happened to him. He took on Mara, which was illusion or Maya. He got off the wheel of samsara. All right, he got off the wheel of samsara, which is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Samsara. All right. When Shakyamuni Buddha superseded the holographic universe, when he superseded the hologram and became one, like Neo, you know, what happened was that he had even the gods come down and prostrate at his feet, so-called gods, right? So he's a human, and now he had the gods come and prostrate at his feet, right? You had Vishnu, you had Brahma, you had all these ancient celestial gods come from their dimension and went to his dimension and prostrated at his feet. They prostrated at his feet because they said, we have something more to learn ourselves. Respect due. Because they was still considered to still be on the wheel of samsara. Because if you look at the ancient celestial diagram from the Tibetan Buddhists, they have the Tonka paintings or the mandalas where they depict the various realms of samsara. And they have the celestial dimension of us humans. They have the rebirth of animals, insects, all that. They have the realm of what they call the hungry ghosts, or what they call the limbo place. They have on the diagram on the wheel of samsara, they show the gods, they show the demigods, you know what I mean? And within these ancient scriptures, they talk about when the gods die, it's a place of sorrow. It's a place where their light dims. And the other gods literally do not want to be around the dying god. It's ill. That's deep. Start giving off a certain smell, the god, start perspirating. And what happens from their celestial place, it reminds the other gods of their own place of death. You know what I mean? Of their own place of impermanence. All right. So they don't want to be around that old god. You know what I mean? They even showed that on that show, American Gods, which was a good show. I can't wait until the next one come out. But what happened? The god Ishtar, right? She was an old god that dealt with the veneration and the recognition of springtime, the spring equinox. And that on one of the series on that show, it shows how she got taken over. She basically didn't have no more devotees or no more human people praising her. People started forgetting about her. And the other god, Odin, I think it was Odin, Odin was saying to her, like, soon you're gonna die as a god because you have no more chi energy basically coming to you. No one is, giving you no more offerings or nothing, because everybody got to eat, right? Everybody eats something. Some people eat food. Some people eat emotions. Some people eat people, huh? Yeah, I'm about to break it down. So now, when everybody is eating, everybody eat, right? So she's not really getting as a full course meal as she want, because now they have this deity called Jesus, right? Jesus Christ, and they showed this on the show. Odin was trying to talk to Ishtar and tell her, like, yo, you know what I mean? Like, listen, you got this other dude over here, this other deity over here called Jesus Christ, and he's taking all your energy. You know what I mean? You should be the one on the platform right now. What's up with that? So gods die. You know what I mean? And they're usually sustained through energy, just like any other. Like I said, Nikola Tesla, everything deals with frequency and energy. All right? Now, I don't know if y'all, like the other movie, Return of the Titans. If you break down that movie, it shows down the same thing. The gods started warring with the humans because the humans turned their backs on the god, and they were no longer being fed anymore. So when Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, when he said, listen, I go even beyond the gods, you know what I mean? That was something that the gods had to pay attention to and recognize and say, like, damn, well, he got totally enlightened, not partially enlightened, not become a god or celestial being that governs over a particular solar system or a universe. He has gone beyond all that. We got something to learn from him, because obviously we can die too and shit, being reincarnated as who knows what, maybe a cockroach somewhere in some project hallway. Shit is deep. So that's why it was interesting. Even for those who even looked at some of Bobby Hemmitt's work in the past. I remember I was, I went through many different schools of thought, and my father, God bless my father and my mother, because I picked those two particular parents, and they was both perfect parents to pick before I incarnated here. And they taught me a lot of things. They were both very much into the mystic traditions. So my father told me about yoga, qigong, tai chi, had us doing it in a Malcolm X Park and stuff, and the kids would laugh at me, of course. You know, it was like we was the black sheep of the hood in my community, and all that shit wasn't popular when I was coming up. You know what I mean? We was vegetarian, all that stuff, doing the herbal teas and all that. You know what I mean? That, you think of yoga, or you think of, these things of like conscious community, or, I'm woke and stuff. That was it was only a few of us like that back in the day. You know what I mean? And back in the day, you didn't have the internet and all that. You literally had to go to the library or meet up with some of the OGs, the older gods or whatever. And if that was the case, you know what I mean? They would school you to little Jews, hit you with little Jews here and there. I was at 12 when I learned black people had an origin in space. You know what I mean? I was 12 for me, it was way over my head at the time. But who I learned it from was some OGs. It was some real street dudes who I had a lot of respect for, some older cats. And I was like, you know what? I think y'all really watching too much Star Trek and whatever, but you know what? I respect y'all. I'm gonna look into this. And it was an over 20-year study of me looking into the Dogon, the Hopi, all these different people who had all these different connections to the Cherokee, all of them to these different constellations, and saying the same thing. It wasn't until even I came across the book Zulu Shaman by Credo Mutwa, and he's one of the last living sangomas or shamans in South Africa who hold that oral tradition, who talk about how black people were on planet Mars before we came here to Earth. And they talk about how we had a nuclear war on planet Mars and all that. So this stuff goes in cycles. It will never stop, my friends. Trust me, it won't. It goes forever. And you'll see that even with the psychedelics, like that 25 gram, when you take the heroic dose, like Terrence McKenna, he used to say like 5 grams. That's a heroic dose. Shit, I got my homeboy Baba Kalindi, the elder. He used to take 30 dose. Now this dude take 40 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. And when you get to those higher doses, you're in. You're in. I don't care if you close your eyes or open your eyes, you're in that dimension. You can't distinguish between third dimension and whatever dimension you're in at that point. You know, I remember at that journey, I mean, that was the journey when I seen the grays, and not only the grays, that's when I started merging into everything. You know what I mean? And I started to learn that, like, this is literally oneness, bro. You know what I mean? Even what we deem as negative, it plays a part. You know what I mean? And when I was looking at this shit from a celestial vision, I was like, at first, my ego tried to hold on to it. And it was like, yo, this is crazy. I'm laughing at the most horrific thing and the most beautiful thing. And I'm understanding that it's all one taste right now. You know what I mean? And it was crazy. But I seen how it was all interconnected and how all of it played off of each other. You know what I mean? It's like, if I could give an example, it's like KRS-One. You know, when I look at all the old school artists, Rakim, KRS-One, Public Enemy, all these people, you know what I mean? But that KRS-One came out with this one song. I forgot the name of the song, but he was breaking down in the song interconnectedness, basically. And he was saying how if it wasn't for this one drug dealer over here or this hustler over here who's on his grimy shit or whatever, that prophet over there wouldn't be born, or that holy man over there wouldn't be born, because he needed the measuring stick. He needed, because, you know, one of the 7 laws of Tahuti, or in the book the Kabbalion talks about the law of polarity, you know, dual opposites. That's just one law that's here in this third dimension. Just, we learn through that. We learn through dualistic thinking. You know, that's why we have 2 hemispheres of our brain. But when you merge them shits in the middle, that's when you're really talking. You know, even in Hinduism, you have the 3 major channels. You have the caduceus. So you have the one snake on one side, the other snake on that side, right? But when both of those 2 channels are merged with the central channel, that's when you have the grand Kundalini awakening, you know? So it's about merging the 2 dual opposites into the oneness. And that's where you even look, that's the whole even purpose of even Tantra. When you look at the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and you become what they call that emergence of the Shakti and the Shiva, or the grand, that's the whole science of the hermaphrodite, actually. Because if you look at the oral teachings of Krita Mutwa and the South African shaman, he talks about how the earlier forms of humans were hermaphrodites. We was a merge of both masculine and feminine. And then eventually we broke off, you know, into these dualistic polarities. You know what I mean? So when I was in that state and I was seeing the emergence, however, you know, and with KRS-One, it was saying, boom, you had to have the man that became the prophet. He had to be in the community and see the grimy dude, you know, to get that fuel, to get that inspiration, to understand, like, yo, that's something I don't want to be. So the grimy dude did play his position. He had a position within the all of the whole, you know. He played a position as a for this other one to become awakened, just through his behavior, through his grimy behavior. So everything plays off of everything, and everything is interconnected. You know what I mean? My mother I remember I was like 11 and 12. I used to ask my mom all the time, like, yo, what's the purpose of evil? What's the purpose of this negativity? And she said, son, she said that you will never know the essence of beauty, of wisdom, of love, or any of these positive attributes if you didn't have negative attributes. She said you wouldn't have the appreciation, you wouldn't have the wisdom to understand what love is. If you didn't understand or experience hate, you would take it for granted. I mean, most people, even say for instance in relationships, when people take people for granted, that's when you see the relationship sometimes turn sour. But sometimes you have arguments and certain things that come up, or upheavals, or even certain times where you might even break up to say like, damn, I almost lost that person. I'm not taking that person for granted. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, even with the essence of love, that dualistic nature, that hatred. When you experience certain things, when you're down and out, when you're out of that rut, when you're out of that down and outness thing, that's when you really feel the real appreciation of that dual opposite of love. When sometimes when you dealt with an asshole, for the sisters out there, or even the brothers, you dealt with somebody in a relationship who was a straight up abusive asshole. You might have get out of that, Lord forbid, you know, you get out of that situation and then you say to yourself, you know what? I'm worthy of having a great, healthy relationship. I'm worthy of being able to experience something called love. And you have that great person in your life. Now you have a measuring stick. Now, not to give comparisons, but now you could have more of appreciation, because now you're saying, wow, okay, now understand this person, you know, we have now, you know, I don't have to do this other type of dance or whatever, you know? So everything plays off of everything. That's why you have something in the psychedelic community. You have something called 5-MeO-DMT. That's the toad medicine. The toad medicine is deep, and it's interesting because in South America you have a lot of structures surrounding the toad, a lot of ancient statues and stuff. And even in ancient Kemet, Timeri, Egypt, they had a deity that was a toad. So they all knew about the toad. Hold on one sec. They all knew about the toad. And 5-MeO-DMT kills the ego. It kills the ego. It kills the so-called individual self-created identity. You know, when you incarnate here and you come from the all, and then you start to actually make yourself. You know what I mean? And say, okay, I'm going to be this incarnation. I'm going to be male or woman. This time I'm going to be woman. Or this time I'm going to be this particular race because my soul actually needs this particular teaching. Okay, this go around I'm going to be whatever, Republican, Democrat. This one I'm going to be an atheist. Or this time, you know, you create yourself. When you deal with merging back into the all, that ego dies and it cries for help. And don't get me wrong, the ego serves a purpose. It has a great purpose when it comes down to the third dimension, because it sustains an identity to be able to have experience, to be able to look at one thing and have a differentiation. To be like, okay, I'm me over here and that tree is that tree over there. Or I'm me right here and I see this person over here. It allows to give a person a sense of individuality. You know what I mean? But when you come into a level like 5-MeO-DMT or toad medicine, most people will tell you it's like what they say, going back home, the great emergence, the great merging. I mean, in yoga, the whole thing of yoga is the yoke, the union, is going back into the union of the all. So the most people that have the hardest time with 5-MeO-DMT is people that really still trying to hold on to the limited perceived self. The limited perceived self. You know what I mean? Because you're eternal. You know what I mean? To look at you and say you're this and you always been this, that's very limiting. You know, I was fortunate to have a lot of past life experiences where I've seen myself come into various incarnations. You know what I mean? I've seen myself in one. I remember I had a flashback. I do many things. I'm a natural healer. I teach Reiki and Shambhala Reiki and, you know, different type of stuff, pranic healing, and I do Qigong and teach Tai Chi and stuff. And I'm a massage therapist as well. So I was going to an event, and I was holding my massage table on my head, walking down the street, and I had a flashback of a past life. And in that particular past life, I was an African woman, and I was seeing myself carrying this vase on my head. And the thing that was interesting was that it was funny. I had to laugh at myself at the moment, because I was looking at myself, and in that not that last lifetime, but that particular lifetime, I was very voluptuous. And I had this walk, them hips was no joke. And I seen in the village, motherfuckers was just looking at me like, God damn, this girl is sexy as hell. So I was laughing at myself and like, God damn, in that lifetime, I was a sexy ass motherfucker. You know what I mean? So it's you know, this thing it's funny. Sometimes you can't take yourself so serious. When you start to see the bigger picture, you start to laugh more. You start to become more joyous. I mean, even on that level, I remember I had experience with these two deities, and it could be perceived as a part of my higher self, or it could even be perceived as an experience of just two actual beings that I was talking to. But these two beings, one of them, I finally figured out. I was like, this being I encountered was Ogun, and I have friends that are into Ifa or into the Yoruba tradition and stuff, and you know, and I'm familiar, but I never took initiation and I never went down that road on that level. But I was surprised that this being came to me, and I seen the energetic outlining of him. He had like a bald head. He was very muscular, and he was talking to me. He was having a conversation, and he was like just giving me all this life advice, you know, and say, hey, you know, he would say, hey, you know, you're a family man now, you do this, it felt like a very stern uncle, you know, and I appreciated the conversation and advice he gave me. And then he dissolved, he disappeared. And as soon as he disappeared, then another being came, and it was like this woman this goddess type of woman, and I could see the energetic outlining of her, and she had this very sensuous energy. She was dripping sexy, you know what I mean? And she had also a very playful energy, and she was giving me this advice like, you know, Dooley, don't take it serious, and you know, when you and your wife is going through this, don't brush it off, and you know, and then, you know, it felt like she was gonna lay it down on me at that moment, because I was feeling this orgasmic energy. I was like, well, goddamn, girl, you know, lay it down on, bro. And then she's like, nope. She's like, oops, now you take that energy to your wife and yo, play with you and stuff. So it was a beautiful experience. What was interesting was that again, it's not a coincidence that they try to label this as a scheduled and stuff, because they don't want you to have access. They don't want you to have access to interdimensional beings. They don't want you to have access to your higher self. They don't want you to have access to star brothers and sisters. They don't want you to have access to your deceased relatives either, you know, and because it's all a level of control. Once they know that's open, then they know ain't no stopping this, you know what I mean? But again, the solar flares, things are changing, and that's why I said it's even a renaissance, because to look at Johns Hopkins University, New York State, to have the ayahuasca church, for instance, in Florida and in Cali, even California is even looking up to legalize psilocybin mushrooms. There's medical backing to see that there's benefit for this. Of course, indigenous people knew this for millions of years. These Europeans are finally catching up. Like at one point, you wouldn't think that the medical establishment would actually have acupuncture or Reiki in these hospitals. But now they're embracing Asian medicinal holistic practices. They have people doing Reiki on clients that are in the hospital that are going into surgery, that are recovering from surgery. You know what I mean? So things do change, my friends. There's seasons. There's a time and season for everything. And as the planet goes through her seasons, there's cycles that we go through too, you know? empires fall, corruptness falls. Nothing can stand on power forever. And like I said, we live in the age of Kali Yuga, where where the society wants everyone to resonate from just the three chakras. All right, survival. You know what I mean? Sex. Everything's overly sexed, and daggone, everybody wants power. You know. We ain't even in the damn thing that's shamed about sex is people don't even know how to approach real sex from a very healing place. Sex is the shit. I'm a sex motherfucking fanatic, truth be told. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna go there. But anyways, but it's the truth. I love it. It's beautiful because it brings us, this is how it brings us into this world. You know what I mean? But if we look at the times, the more golden ages, where it was more a recognition of the goddess energy, we understand that they had all kinds of different tantric temples. You know, temples dedicated to Hathor or Hathor. You know what I mean? Dedicated to Ishtar. You know, and all these temples were dedicated to women that ruled these temples, that literally men and women that would go to these temples, they knew the sexual positions, they knew the breathing techniques, they knew everything that came down to healing the body, the mind, and the spirit, because there wasn't a negative connotation of how we approach and look at sex today or love making today. That's why when you go to India, I forgot the name of the tantric temple, but the temple has a big orgy all around the temple. You know what I mean? Women in all kinds of position, women going down on each other. You know, brother enjoying this woman here, this one. And the thing is this, they wasn't looked at in a negative way. Old people, children pass that temple every day, and it's not frowned upon because it's just part of their culture. You know what I mean? So when you looked at Tantra, you understand that people would approach it from a medical perspective, and they say, okay, the reflexology points on the penis or the vagina, and they say, okay, wow, this person is dealing with heart issues. Let the woman say, let me give this man fellatio. Let me go down on this man and stimulate the tip of his penis, which deals with the heart. Or let me go on the sides of his penis, the shaft, and let me lick right there because that's going to deal with his lungs. You know, so these are all different things that they knew. You know, they knew that, okay, this particular sexual position is going to deal with stimulating that particular organ because that person needs more chi in that place. So it dealt with a health thing. It dealt with a spiritual thing because, again, we was talking about the ancient hermaphrodite. So we was merging the polarities together so we can learn how people can take the Tantra and have the masculine energy and feminine energy merge as one, you know? And that's where they would take the psychedelics as well. So they would take mushroom, for instance, and they would take the partner, you would both take the mushroom, and both of y'all would merge and go on cosmic journeys together as one body. Kalindi talks a lot about that as well, you know. So there was many approaches to Tantra, you know what I mean, and the sacred sexuality. I remember my father used to take me to a new age bookstore, metaphysical bookstore when I was a kid. It was called or a child. It was called Unicorn Books. And the thing is, I used to hate going there Saturday mornings because I was used to be bored out of my mind. The only thing that caught my attention as a little boy was the crystals in the shop, and I used to always chill around this big amethyst crystal. But one day I was looking around the store, I was bored with the crystal. Even the crystal didn't that day catch my attention, so I'm looking around the store, just looking at the books now, just being nosy, and I came across this tantric book. I think it was called The Secret Tantra something. It's like a light brown book with a red stamp on it. And the book had full of pictures on it. So I'm a little boy. I'm like, okay, all these pictures having all these people having these sexual positions and stuff. So I'm looking at it, it's like, looking at it, and I'm saying to myself, what is this? And my father sees what I'm doing, and he comes to me, and he tells me about the birds and the bees. And he essentially tells me, he says, son, he tells me, he said, this is sex. And he said, you know, this is, he says, making love is to understand God. And I'll never forget that. He told me having sex is to understand God. So this is how they approached the temples. The ancient pole dancers, the strippers that you have today, they were the ancient tantric priestesses back in the day. You know what I mean? Because there were some people that were born that had just certain qualities about them. Like when I seen some of my past lives, I seen that I had a consistent past lives, seeing some past lives that I've been picking up where I left off at. So I was like, okay, in that past life, I was teaching martial art. In that past life, I was doing, you know, healing work with people. So it's not a coincidence that I gravitate towards those type of things during this lifetime. You know, that's the same thing with some of these pole dancers and stuff at the strip club. A lot of them were ancient healers using energy, you know, but now because everything surrounding sexuality here in America, at least, or in the West, is made perverted. You know, make it pervert like, or you know, or have it just solely at the second chakra and haven't worked it up to the heart chakra. Then that's all it becomes. You know, now it becomes like just a obsession, and that's why you have people in China daggone having the sex robots and stuff. I know y'all heard about that. You know, and it's a damn shame because, you know, you got people out there in Japan and stuff, and even in China working almost 18 hours straight and having no time for a relationship or intimacy. And they so tired when they come off of work and they want some type of spiritual, not so much spiritual, but they want some type of sexual type of connection or release, that they get these robot dolls. But what happens is when they get an actual real person, how do they relate to the real person now? Because now they were just all geared to just getting their needs fulfilled and just dealing with sex from a just pure physical materialistic type of level, you know. And for the fellas out there, please look up inner ejaculation. My dad told me that from day one too, that do not waste your semen. That when you release your semen, fellas, you're losing a lot of chi, you're losing a lot of energy. And that's why a lot of kings in the past that knew about Tantra and they had a lot of concubines or had a lot of mistresses and stuff, they were able to please all those women because they knew how to keep the energy within. You know what I mean? Yep, they knew how to keep the energy within. Because like they have people like even Montauk Chia. I met him before, interesting man. He has books on Tantra as well. And he talks about how when a man lets out semen, even 1 drop of sperm is like equivalent to 90 drops of blood. So the man loses a lot of energy. And that's how men do a rapid aging as well, when it comes down to releasing too much sperm. So the men out there, look up the DARE technique exercise, to tantric qigong technique to sustain your orgasm, to have an inner orgasm, to bring the orgasmic energy up your kundalini, up your spine, through your chakras and all that. And yeah, this is important. But I'm gonna cut this video because I've been kind of going for a while and I kind of talked all over the place about different subjects. I really wanted to kind of just yeah, I just really wanted to kind of hold on. Yeah, hold on. Yep. I really just wanted to kind of just stick with just really